little bit about our process. So you will hear me say a lot of, and from there, we went here. And of course, everyone knows that brainstorming is not a clear process. It's not one step to another. We would talk about something and then questions would come up, there would be confusion, and we would either dive in more deeply into the subject, or we would take a step back and look a little bit more at the foundational elements that we needed to take a look at. So I don't have all of our questions and our jumping off points listed, but certain things that concerned us were things such as granularity, talking about combining with audio elements, talking about the HHL-specific scatter graphs that we were looking at specifically, and looking at our explicit goals for this piece. So in the beginning, we brainstormed devices. So I won't read through all of these, but it was blue sky brainstorming, so anything that came into our head was put on the list. And if anyone wants to see our exact process, you can take a look at all of our lovely posted, giant white post-its over in our corner there that are hanging on for dear life at this point. So we listed different devices, and we found, I think it was around when we were talking about temperature changes, we decided to take a look at contrasting tactile elements. So essentially a big list of opposites. So we went through, listed them, and then from there...
Well, hold on, Chelsea, do you mind if I read through some of them? Just because I know the text is small and not everyone in the room can read the screen. So the contrasting tactile elements were hot and cold, wet and dry, which was quickly eliminated from the ick factor. Rough and smooth, sharp and dull, squishy and not squishy, rounded and hard edge, up and down, high and low, in and out, shaking and still, easy and hard to move, that meant about the amount of resistance, push and pull, heavy and light, fast and slow, and open and closed.
Did you have a degree of thinking in there?
No, we did not.
Oh, we did not, but that definitely would have gone an ick factor.
What was that? We talked sweet and salty, but then we quickly got away from that one.
So that's here we said we talked sweet and salty.
So a couple of questions that came up while we were talking about these different elements were, how do we make data more approachable and palatable? And why do we care? And what is our goal? And so what we came up with, our goal is to observe, describe, and measure, and measure change, which we later teach to compare data. So, from there we realized that there are different kinds of data. And there are also different kinds of graphs. So do we want people to understand the wide variety of data? Do we want to explore the trend or specific plot points? So we came up with two questions for discontinuous data, how many, and continuous data, what is the relationship? And then from there we decided to go through what the visitors will be doing. So for HHL specifically, they'd be measuring themselves, then they would find themselves in the data, so finding a point. Then they would compare themselves to other data points, observe the data, and examine relationships, whether a continuous relationship, so a trend, so a trend line, or a discontinuous relationship, such as for male and females, for the graphs that we handed out, so a quantity comparison. So then we went back through our different contrasting tactile elements and started to eliminate ones. We looked at things such as the ick factor, or the aesthetics. We looked at the technical feasibility, and we also went through and assigned which ones were good for showing a point, which ones were good for showing trends, and which ones were good for showing quantity, and which ones were good at all three. And from then, well, that was the end of day one, actually, so that was day one. So then, starting on day two, we kind of took a step back. Rather than going more specifically into more about the point, trend, and quantity. And we decided we really needed to establish our message here so that we could all be thinking along the same lines for what we needed. So to get to that message, we first listed the skills that visitors would acquire. So they would observe data, they would describe a data set, they would ask a question of data, they would change or manipulate how data are represented, they would again describe a data set, and then they would use data to compare or draw hypotheses. And our end message was, data can help me understand and explore the world around me. So, then we're done. No, we're not done. But from there, we decided that we would go back to our list of devices that we had listed, which we'll go back to because I had that in order. But that long list we had of things like magnets, a tactile, a vibrating mouse, our Ouija board example, and we went back through and looked at them again in terms of those point and trend and quantity, because we decided that we needed to do all three. We needed people to be able to find a point, we needed people to be able to see a trend, and we needed them to be able to sense a quantity of points at any location. And we also decided that we wanted people to be able to freely explore the graph and also to be guided along the trend. So we went through and we crossed off options, once again, because of technical feasibility as well. And we landed on the Ouija board / vibrating mouse as our perfect thing to prototype. And so we broke off into groups, and Boob and Peter and Eric created the prototype, and they are going to talk about it now.
So yeah, as Chelsea said, going through evaluating the ideas of the brainstorming we did, we went with what we're calling the Ouija board idea, which is basically you have a puck, which will, we figured there'd be two modes for this puck on a tabletop. We set ours up on a horizontal tabletop. We'll show you our prototype in a bit. Or we also figured out that it could actually go in a vertical plane as well. And again, obviously seeing it probably will help you understand what I'm talking about, but bear with me. And what we decided to do, there'd be the Ouija board puck. It would be a automatic driving mode, so to speak. And the idea is that you place your hand on it, and it would sort of guide you through where the data is, or if it's at a point where there's a trend line. So you can kind of get the idea that we're thinking is you can get an idea of, like I said, where the trend line is, and then when you hit your data point in that trend line, it would have a particular tactile feedback. What we've set up now is it vibrates at a certain frequency, but we're thinking, it probably should be more like a good snap, if you will. So that would be sort of the automatic drive mode. Then what you could do if you wanted to is kind of go into a manual mode where you could sort of check out the space yourself. And by vibrating feedback, you might be able to explore, by various levels of vibrating feedback, you can sort of explore where the data points, where groups of data points were, how they were spread out in that space. So that's sort of what we came to. We thought, and as it was pointed out, we sort of, for a bunch of reasons, came up with that idea that we thought might be the best one to pursue. There's various issues where we're a little worried about how big of a space is this going to be moving out. If you have limited mobility issues, there's things like that to be resolved. We have various ideas of maybe how we could address that at the moment. But we have a sort of pros and cons of why we think this idea was the best one to pursue. So one of the things, again, that we liked about it was that if you have the granularity of data, like a grouping of data in one particular area, a large grouping of data in one area, the vibration of that puck could be corresponding to the density, the granularity of those points. And so again, it would change as you explore that space, or even if placed it in the automatic driving mode, you could tell, kind of give you an idea of where all the points were, if it was like a scatter plot or something along that line. The vibration could change as you have that changing granularity. So you might be able to make an image in your head of what are all the data points at that are being presented with.
Plus the audio overlay.
There's gonna be we figured there'll be audio with it as well. We didn't and visual elements as well. We did pursue the audio part because there's another group that's already doing that, so I figured we'd steal their ideas later after their presentation. We're thinking that this would accompany a visual, another monitor that would actually have the graph represented visually. There's an idea that it's being this puck table, if you will, or element being maybe in front of a monitor, maybe at an incline, or we were thinking about ideas where maybe somehow the graph visually is presented on top of the puck or from down below, so you're actually kind of moving over the actual visual, representation of whatever graph you're looking at. Again, there's pros and cons to that. Your hand's getting in the way, but we thought that that's another way that might be explored at some point. If you have any questions, obviously we can do a demo in a bit, but if you have any immediate questions, I'll ask, or sure, hand it back to you.
So when we broke into groups, immediately before they went off to build the prototype, we actually did go through the personas that were included in our packets with the idea of using the vibrating mouse / Ouija board idea, and made a list basically for each person what we thought we should be aware of in the building of the component, and things like including the audio and the visual, including very, very clear instructions, having a timeout mechanism, or a timeout mechanism warning, that is, we all knew would be very important in the end prototype. But